seeing if there are any chat questions. At the end of the talk, we'll say, well, raise your hand if you want to ask a question for the brief. We've got our first presentation from starting early, but that gives us more time to chat. Does anybody have any questions to raise at this point? No, fine. By the way, welcome to you all. It's wonderful that so many people are interested so far in our region. Now, who have we got from Westmill to talk to us? Is it Warren? It was going to be Warren. I saw Westmill come up earlier.
Warren's actually not able to make it just yet. He's going to be a little bit late because he's got a current meeting and he gives his apologies. But it's myself and Tom.
Who's, oh, Emma, hello.
So yeah, myself, sorry, that's not helpful. Emma Arnold and Tom Lowe, who's also waving.
Leslie, sorry, I tried to raise my hand and it doesn't work, but could I, were you thinking we might have a chance to introduce each other to each other about which organisations we're representing?
Well, we've got, yes, I was thinking that. I was depending how many people were here, how long it would take. Should we just very quickly do that? At the moment, I'm Chair of Wiltshire Wildlife Community Energy, but I'm giving that up soon and doing somebody else is doing it. And I'm very interested and have been in community energy for ages. Pete, I've jumped over you. Tell us who you are.
Yeah, I'm a Director and Secretary of Dorset Community Energy.
And he runs Wessex Community, this one.
Yeah, Secretary of this. Secretary, yeah.
David? And Caroline?
Caroline, I'm Salisbury Community Energy.
Sorry, I don't know who I'm talking to.
Caroline.
Oh, I can't see you, that's all.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's...
I can see David sitting on his sofa.
Yeah, right. Yes. We're part of the SSCES, which is South Summit Community Energy Society. But also we have a personal interest in it all. We have quite a bit of natural generation here on our site, and we're on our 3rd electric vehicle now. So that just fills you in a little bit on that.
Thank you. Right, Chris, Stuart Bennett. Chris, are you there?
Yep, just unmuting. Yeah, Chris Stewart Bennett. I'm a Director of Low Carbon Gordano. We have various ground mount and roof mount solar projects.
Okay, and thank you. Stuart Crocker?
Thank you. Just some of you may know this, you can unmute by pushing the space bar. You probably know that. It's a quicker way of doing it. So I'm Chair of Avalon Community Energy and also the steering group of Somerset Community Energy.
Great. Emma, we're going to come to you later because you're going to go our first talk. Paul Fair.
Hi, yeah, Paul from Energy for All. We support about 30 community energy co-ops around the UK.
Good, and we've seen a lot of you lately. Alistair Singleton, still muted.
Hi, Alistair Singleton from Keynsham Community Energy. Morning.
Good. Thank you. Brian, muted. Oh, we've lost you altogether now, Brian. Oh, there you are, but you're still muted.
Yeah, no, I'm here. So I just pressed the space bar and video stopped. Right. I'm Brian Matthew. I'm a Wiltshire councillor, and for my sins, I'm the one that put forward the climate emergency motion and got it passed. So but we're doing lots of stuff, and great to see everyone here this morning.
Good, that's a great achievement. Tom, we're going to hear from you too in a minute, aren't we?
Yep. I'm Tom Lowe. I'm part of the Westmill Sustainable Energy Trust. I coordinate public visits to the Westmill Wind Farm and Solar Park on the Oxfordshire-Wiltshire border. That's
excellent. And you're working with Anita today. And I was just talking to Tom, who's on my screen is above you, who's also going to give a talk on his rooftop PV. We'll come back to you, Tom Burnett. Right, Henry Lovegrove.
Muted, Henry.
Press the space bar.
Muted. Can you hear us? Unmute.
Never mind.
Maybe I can unmute him. I don't know.
Okay, well, let's go to Derek Moss.
Well, I'm giving a talk in a minute as well, but I'm from Dorset Community Energy. You'll hear more about me when I get to the talk.
Of course, absolutely. Susan.
I'm just and also ran from another community energy.
Oh, great to see you. Welcome. Oh, hello, Pete. Everyone knows Pete, don't we? Pete?
That's Pete. I don't seem to be on the gallery, but I'm in the community fund of the Wiltshire Wildlife Community Energy. I don't seem to be able to get my picture up.
All right, that's Peter Newell. Yes, thank you, Peter. And Pete Kapner, I'm going through my list. I don't know if you all have the same list in your gallery view, but Pete Kapner's there. Hi, Pete.
Hi, MD of Bath and West Community Energy. We also, like Low Carbon Gordano, have a mixture of rooftop and ground-mounted solar PV, one small hydro, and we're also delivering a number of flexibility demand-side response projects with domestic householders as well, looking at heat pumps, EV charge points, and demand shifting.
He knows everything. He's been involved with everything for years and years. Tom Lowe.
I've done my introduction, haven't I? Did it earlier.
Okay, sorry, I got mixed up. I'm just walking through.
That's all right. No problem.
Eccleston. Richard Eccleston. Can't hear me.
Sorry, yeah, technical challenges. Yeah, NADA Community Energy.
Terrific. And there's John Bateman. I know him well.
Yeah, it's John Bateman, Wiltshire Wildlife. I think I know most of you. I'm becoming a bit of an old hand at this. Good morning, everybody.
WCEN as well as Wiltshire Wildlife, aren't you, Community Energy? Then Pete Newman is the person we can't see yet. Pete, you need somehow to turn your video on. It's nice that you're here. Alan Marion Davis.
Yes, hello. Good morning. I'm manager from NADA Community Energy, and we have a mixed portfolio as well. Loads of solar panels. We're also going to put some renewable heating in schools, and we're about to start the car club. So Gustavo hopefully will be along later on to talk about that.
Terrific. Thank you. Keith Wheaton. I don't know what your surname is.
Green, yes, hello everybody. Yes, I'm at NGI Stour Valley Industrial and Problem Society, and we've got 20 kilowatts of PV and 3 kilowatts of hydro at Springhead Trust, which is in Fontwell Magna in Dorset.
That's very good. Thank you. Caroline Lanyon?
Yes, Salisbury Community Energy, and we've got 206 kilowatts generating now on 5 sites, including Salisbury Cathedral. Yes.
Steve H. I can't see you, but I can see your name. Steve H. No. Let's go. Warren, are you here, or is he coming later? I need to.
I'm here. Oops. Hi, Leslie. I'm here. So I'm not sure. Presumably, Tom and Emma have already said something about themselves. Obviously, we're all from Westmill Sustainable Energy Trust, and also got Cecilia on the call as well. And we'll talk a little bit about.
Just a minute. I'm going to come back to you, Warren and Emma and Tom, whoever's talking, because you're going to be our first presentation. Thank you. Good to see you. I can't. David Saunders.
Hi, Leslie. Yes, I'm with Lockheed Lodge Solar, which is experimenting with new models of rooftop solar.
Excellent. Bill Shaw? Can't see you. The light's behind you. Bill? Press your space bar. Bill? Can't hear you yet, Bill. Can we hear you?
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay, I'm a director of Bristol Power Cooperative and also a shareholder in Bath and West Community Energy.
Excellent, right. Oh gosh, there's another whole page of you. Alistair Singleton. Oh no, we've done some of these, haven't we? Alistair? Is anybody who hasn't, yes, I've got 2 pages and half of them are here, already here. Is there anybody who hasn't had a chance to introduce himself who'd like to? Cecilia.
I'm from Westmill Sustainable Energy Trust, where we have 5 wind turbines and 22,000 solar panels. So you'll hear all about that soon. And I work with Emma on the education side, producing resources, educational resources.
Excellent. Thank you. Richard, Gustavo, Nick Murray. Hi, Nick.
Hello. Yes. So chairs leadership at Wiltshire Climate Alliance and Wiltshire Council Climate Emergency Task Group.
And anybody else would like to introduce themselves before we move on to West Mill's presentation? Have anybody I've horribly missed out?
Hi, me, if you can hear me, Richard Hamer.
Oh, yes, I can. Yes, hi.
Hi, Richard Hamer, Wiltshire Council. I manage our housing portfolio.
Right. Are you the person that we've talked to about Stone Circle?
No, that would be someone else.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else want to introduce themselves? No. Fine. Okay. Let's go back to the agenda and let's hear from West Mills about their education program. There's 4 of you here, so I don't know how you're going to do it, but you and Pete West will work it out.
Yeah, I'll lead off. So I'm Warren Hicks, trustee at West Mill. We're starting to. Hello.
Hey.
We're kicking off a number of new initiatives over the last year or so, particularly getting Emma on board and Tom on board, who will sort of talk about what they do shortly. And we obviously got solar farm and a wind farm, probably one of the few co-located sites. So we're actually trying to turn it into an education centre. So we've secured funding for a yurt on the site and also toilet blocks and stuff like that, with a view of getting schools to the site once we're out of this COVID period. So hopefully March, April next year. I'll probably hand you over to Emma, who will now talk about the education programme that she is in charge of at West Mill, and then that followed by Tom. He'll talk about our virtual tours, because we're still getting tours to the place, but virtually. Quite an achievement. Yeah, Emma.
Thanks. Thanks, Warren.
Okay. Can I share my screen? I think I can. I'll try and do that now.
Pete will make sure you can share.
Hopefully you can see that.
Brilliant. Yes.
Okay, so my background is in education and design, actually, sustainable design. And so I came to WCEN about just over a year ago now, with the aim of taking up an already existing education project and bringing it together as something maybe a little bit more cohesive, but also ultimately rolling it out and getting more schools involved, but also more other youth groups involved. So we'd have people visiting the site, and I'd be able to go out and visit schools and homeschoolers and scout groups and all sorts of things. And of course, this year has slightly put a kibosh on the visits. However, as Tom is going to tell you later, we've been able to do virtual visits. And actually, that's something I'm starting to do in education as well. The good thing was I was able to very much focus on our resources. So I just wanted to take you through relatively briefly, because you'll be able to see a link that should come up in chat to our web page that will take you to all the resources, which you can browse at leisure. But the idea was initially to put together a 6-lesson pack looking at energy, electricity, the story of our site, and then specifically wind power and solar power and a sustainable future. Now, the next lesson we're working on is electric vehicles and electric transport and sustainable transport. And I've also done some work in conjunction with Osney Lock Hydro, so we're putting hydro in there as well. So this is something that's really expanding quickly. And what I really wanted to do was put something together that was both pedagogically sound and could be used by teachers really easily in the context of sort of younger years, Key Stage 2, Key Stage 3, so up to around 12, 13, but could also be used by a complete layman, a homeschooler, somebody working within the community with the youth group, and they would have everything they needed. So what we have is each presentation will sort of take you through different areas, looking specifically at what has a specific focus. And within those, and I'm skimming through this very quickly, obviously, hopefully you'll have a chance to look later. There are activities and interactive challenges and very much hands-on activities, as well as links to relevant videos. So it can be used as a presentation, but it can be also dipped into. And to help with that, for each of these, there is a delivery guide, and this is the part hopefully that will help anybody present it or use it. And that gives all the answers to all the questions that might come up. It differentiates the questions and answers. So if you've got a younger group, for example, you can focus certain questions on those. It's got discussion points. It includes investigation points and things that children might want to explore in greater detail, including, as I said, my background being design and technology, physical projects, hands-on things that they can do as well. So it's not just, although this looks very much like an educational document, possibly a bit dry, it's actually about trying to engage people in going a bit further. From an educational perspective, there's also a lesson plan that comes with it. That's a single page lesson plan that's very much directed towards school users. And then there is a series of worksheets for each lesson. This is for the wind one, so I should show that first. And you get a worksheet, you get a printable black and white copy of the worksheet, and you get a worksheet with answers. And for each of the worksheets, I'm now producing one which is completely able to be done online, so there's no need for printing at all. And each of the lessons, this probably gives you a slightly better idea. I've now produced on both PowerPoint and in PDF form because it's slightly more user-friendly as it transpired. And you get, in the PDF form presentation, you get links to all the other documents, and you get presenter notes as well to help you present it. So there's various different ways of presenting it. Hopefully it covers as many bases as possible. But we really wanted to do something which was appealing to both adults teaching and very easy and straightforward to do, but also to children. We've also produced some activity sheets, and this is something that's ongoing. And the activity sheets, again, are slightly differentiated so they can appeal to younger users, but also some things like, for example, the word search might be more challenging. And hopefully the idea is they get children out, they get children thinking about the environment and specific aspects of conservation. And it's very much a call to action, but a proactive one. And all the way through, what I've tried to do is make anything, for example, where we talk about, climate crisis, followed up immediately by something that is proactive. So there is something they can think about and discuss, but also there's something they can act on. So it's not a negative thing, that children are feeling empowered. And really, it's recently been trying to roll that out. I've been in touch with schools. As a teacher, I fully understand that at the moment teachers are not always checking extraneous emails, and it has been quite difficult to engage schools. Although we've had several come to the website, I haven't heard back specifically from schools. But the really nice thing that I wanted to share is recently we've had a scout group get in touch, and next Wednesday I'm doing a presentation to the scout group for their conservation badge. They're very keen to come to the site as well. And the good thing about something like that, from our perspective, in terms of rolling out our message, is once we've done one, we could potentially do hundreds of them. And so I hope that through this kind of engagement, we'll be able to get people back on site when it's possible. And in the future, having the yurt, hopefully that will make things even more exciting. So that is really what we're doing at the moment. I don't know if Cecilia wants to add anything to that very quickly.
No, that's fine, Emma. I was just writing a bit in the chat, but this is really a very new initiative. And so it's as and when and if you use them, we would really welcome any feedback so that we can improve them as an ongoing base for more people to use. We have really, I don't remember if you said this, Emma, but we sort of pitched it from the 6 to 12-year-old age range, but it isn't exclusively for that. But equally, we are going to try to move on to secondary schools a bit more, but they do very much have their own national curriculum, is, the science, physics, chemistry, geography, they do cover quite a lot of this material anyway. So, but feedback would be really helpful to us so we can improve on what you see. So do send it to anybody you know. Yeah. And it is supposed to be standalone, because I'm a supply teacher at the moment, and so sometimes I have to go into schools and I don't have any lessons, and I can quite easily quickly hit this, and it's aimed at anybody, a teaching assistant, anybody during lockdown, a parent sitting at home, anybody. And we've tried really, because Emma and I are both teachers, we've tried to put stuff that's not going to mean that the person delivering is going to have to do all the work. They're just providing it. So at the bottom of all Emma's PowerPoints, there's lots of notes for people, so they're not sort of they're not really frightened about delivering this. So we try to make it accessible to as wide a population as possible.
And we'd be grateful for any sharing you can do. That'd be amazing.
That's fantastic. I can't. Can we stop the screen share? I'd like to see the people.
Let me stop share.
Yeah, I think that's amazingly impressive. That's really, really good. And you're happy for everybody. You want people to use this.
Please, yeah. The more the merrier. And as Cecilia said, feedback. But yes, I mean, that would be great. We really need to be able to spread it out, and it's a challenge.
That's
yeah. Leslie, can Tom have a quick chat about the virtual tours, and then we can talk about how we propagate this.
Okay, let's go to virtual tours. We should have allowed you more than 10 minutes, as you've got. Sorry. Please do carry on. Virtual tours.
Yeah, morning everyone. I'm Tom Lowe. I'm part of the West Mill Sustainable Energy Trust. I coordinate public visits to the wind farm and solar park we have at West Mill on the Oxfordshire-Wiltshire border. Thank you so much for inviting us to your discussions this morning. I'd like to narrate a trailer, if I may, which showcases our virtual tours. I think I've been barred from screen sharing, so if somebody could free that up, that would be useful.
Pete will do that.
Thank you. Oh, no, I think it's working now. Okay, that's fine. So I'm just going to chat you through our new virtual tours, which we're really kind of keen to share with many people. I'm just going to show you a little trailer that we have here. We run guided tours to our wind farm and solar park at Watchfield. These usually take place in the warmer months through April, normally to around about October. We welcome so many people to the site, over 10,000 in the last 5 years, all of whom have been welcomed by one of our team of 24 volunteer guides. But with like many that meet and greet the public, we've had to close our doors pretty much in 2020. We've had to rethink about how we can reach people who are interested in what we do and how the West Mill site operates. So the logical step was to create a virtual tour. It's a visual journey around the site with narration from a volunteer guide. The initial benefit of these tours is that by not traveling to the site from elsewhere in the country, we immediately chalk mark a reduction in CO2 emissions, no car travel or anything, which is good. The tours are easy to sign up to, all mechanized through the Zoom video conferencing platform. Access to the tours all automated, so all you receive is a link to click through, and that gets you into the tour room. Now, once on the tour, you get to hear the guides tell the story of how the turbines and the solar panels were constructed, how they link into the energy grid. You learn how the landowner developed the idea through various planning applications, all the way through to the installation of the equipment. We explain the way in which the turbines are positioned, how they're fixed into place. You also discover how each turbine got its name. They each have a name chosen by one special group of people. You can find out a bit more about that. There's also a very descriptive overview of the technology that drives the turbines and the panels, and you get to hear the background to how the site came into being and how a team of cooperatives worked together to enable the site of West Mill to exist and operate. And there's an insight into the need for sustainability as well. There's a bit of discussion on how the West Mill site has encouraged biodiversity to flourish on site. Really easy to sign up to. You go to WCEN.org, click on plan your visit and follow the links through to view dates and times. We don't charge for the tours because we want them to be kind of accessible to everyone without cost getting in the way. We do encourage those who join us where possible to make a donation, as donations really help us cover the costs and progress our work. We do lead tours on site for groups large and small through April to October, as I said, all dependent on social rules and regulations. But the plan with these new virtual tours is to hold these year round. So there are plenty of ways to come and visit us, and we can also reach people who are not necessarily in our local area. So WCEN.org to plan the virtual tour and come and join us, and do please spread that through your networks. We'd really appreciate it. Any questions I can answer, but thank you very much.
Any questions, anybody? Can't see any. I'm amazingly impressed by everything you've done, but the standard of obviously of your tour as well as of your educational materials. It's mind-blowing. I hope we will all disseminate that amongst all the people we know, so that people will come to West Mill to exploit those resources, which are fantastic. Thank you very much for telling us about
I think Pete Capen's got a question, Leslie.
Pete?
Unmute.
Sorry. Yeah, all looks really, really exciting stuff. Really good. I just had a quick question about the virtual tours. Are they virtual as in somebody is actually going around with a video camera as you're looking, or is the tour bit recorded and you just have a narrator that does it live, if you like?
It's a brilliant idea to do the former, but sadly, unfortunately, live streaming and satellite uplinks and stuff are beyond us. So it is the latter. It's a pre-recorded video that we've made with expert narration by one of our guides. But if we had the budget to do the former, I'd love to do that with my anorak on when it comes to TV and radio and video.
How long is it, by the way?
It depends on how many questions we get from the floor. With no questions, the tour run through is normally about 25 minutes, but with questions and a bit of dialogue going between the guide and the audience, definitely inside an hour. It can normally stretch to maybe somewhere between half an hour and 45 minutes.
Oh, that's good. So you can't just log on to it and watch the tour sitting at home on your own?
There is a taster. As you go to our website, there is a short narrated taster, but to get the full experience and the full overview, it's always nice to come and join us on the virtual tour, which goes even more behind the scenes, and you have a two-way dialogue with a guide rather than just a narration that you can't have a chat with.
So we have to book it, in effect?
Yep, all via the website. They run once a month. It's all coordinated via, I'm sure you come across Eventbrite.
Yes.
That way, rather than kind of doing tours to one person here, two people there, one person there, which means we'd probably be doing it every day. We normally try and kind of collate these into groups of people. We do it on once a month because, of course, we all have volunteer guides and we can't always kind of come and guide with visitors at the drop of a hat.
That's brilliant. But we can access all the educational documents from your website, can we?
Yes.
Directly. Yeah. That's as I said, that's brilliant. Thank you very much for telling us all about that and for all the work you've put into it. We have to move on swiftly because we've got a tight agenda. It's Tom Burnett is next, isn't he, from Dorset Community Energy. You're going to talk about rooftop PV. We're going to go from great big windmills and huge solar farms to rooftops, which is we've all got in our communities. Tom Burnett?
Absolutely, Leslie. I take it people can hear me okay. Pete, do you want to share your screen or shall I share my screen? So you're muted. Sorry, Pete. You're mute.
We can't hear you, Pete.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, if you can share your screen, Tom, it's enabled, and then you can move on with your slides.
Okay, so people should be able to see that?
Yep.
Yep.
So I pulled together some slides this morning thinking I should just get my sort of thoughts straight. I'm Tom Burnett and I'm a director of Dorset Community Energy and Salisbury Community Energy. And over the last couple of years, I've been working in particular with those two groups to deliver rooftop PV. So Dorset Community Energy since 2018 August, we did an RCF grant, we did a share raise in 2019, so it's still 700 kilowatts. We're now at about 600 kilowatts of this, and on secondary schools and Dorset healthcare sites by March 21. And then actually Caroline Langan mentioned about Salisbury Community Energy, which actually started back in 2017, 2 RCFs later, with 200 kilowatts on 5 sites across Salisbury, but in particular Salisbury Cathedral, which we were really hoping was sort of going to galvanise the community to the next sort of wave of projects. So they're the two portfolios that I've been working on with those community groups in the last couple of years. And just sort of lessons learned, I thought, so I just sort of jotted these down. Definitely not everything here. It's there's a lot of text on this slide. I would just, I think it's the easiest way. Everything takes so much longer than you expect. Lots of sites fall away. In Dorset, I just totaled up the sites to get to our current 600 kilowatts, which is 7 sites. We worked with 27 sites and 2.4 megawatts. So yeah. So only a quarter of the sites have actually come through. So there's a lot of work to get there. The PPA, it is competitive, the PPA market. There are lots of other people involved in it, particularly on the larger sites as well. And also on the bigger sites, you've got added complexity around procurement, public procurement can raise its head, which makes it even more complicated, and actually usually puts the brakes on things. In the case of Dorset, we had a low carbon Dorset grant, which really helped us be successful. And it also means that you only got to raise 60% of the capital because the grant there is for 40% of the cost of the project. So that was a real help to us. In schools have been pretty easy to work with, I'd say, but hospitals were less easy, although that's understandable given COVID. And I think I didn't mention COVID specifically here, but obviously we got hit with COVID even at the start of this year. We were really concerned that it might put the brakes on everything, but actually, tribute to everyone, we've managed to continue through that to deliver the Dorset portfolio in particular. Salisbury had pretty much been delivered before that point. Point around, it really is key having that champion on the site side. Without that, as well as the Bencom side, so you definitely need that. Both of these portfolios were kick-started with RCF grants, and it really does help having that seed capital. I think new development capital for smaller societies is clearly a problem. And then I think I just put something down about the relationship between the consultant and the board, the right level of management. I think in these cases, actually, it's mutually supportive when it's right. It's just about getting the right balance between the consultant getting on and doing his piece and the board doing their bit. But that's the balance that gets sort of in a relationship that does develop over years.
Okay.
Someone's not on mute, but Salisbury specific. Salisbury was a different sort of beast to Dorset in that it was a new society, and we were trying to see whether we could make it stand alone on its own 2 feet. It's very hard to do that now because you need quite a lot of PV capacity to bring in enough income to do it. So in this case, we came up with a partnership model with Schools Energy Co-op, who then came in and funded it and managed the site. So Salisbury Community Energy doesn't have to do all the management of the members, and it makes life a lot easier for the directors to run it. But it was quite a lot of work setting up that partnership, I'd say. I mean, it took 9 months to basically work with the partner to bring that all through, which is Schools Energy Co-op, which is energy. And I guess it would also make it more difficult as time goes on for SCE to become an owner of its own assets. Yeah, so I think there's a general point there about established Bencom could look at ways to work with new groups as well, so that partnership model. So there are some lessons, definitely not all. I think the one, the obvious thing I haven't said here is actually rooftop PV is hard work. You know, it's not easy to deliver this stuff. I mean, so basically this is a megawatt of sites. It's taken a couple of years to pull that together. And quite a lot of sort of, incorrect turns and so threats and opportunities. Well, the public sector decarbonisation fund, which is clearly a brake on things, because certainly in Dorset's case, most of its sites they're all public sector sites, and there could be more policies going forward, which basically gives the grants and the money to the public sector sites to do the renewables themselves. We've also got the Department of Education, who are standardising their approach to procurement, which is more likely to favour bigger providers than smaller. We've got a competitiveness in the marketplace. Most of us have looked at renewables by now as well. So you talk to the key site decision maker, they have a pretty good reason why they haven't done it already. And so you sort of got to unlock that. And then also I don't know where we're going with the RCF money and other sort of development money to support the growth of these Bencoms. So I think it's quite important that there is availability of finance for that. Opportunities, again, momentum coming out of the decarbonisation fund. So maybe schools and various sites have looked at things, but they can't do it. It's quite narrow windows. So I think that will come and pass. That opportunity for the public sector, then community energy can come into the fold, I think. So I think it's a bit of a natural break, maybe, certainly in terms of completely new site development. Obviously got this incredibly ambitious green revolution, 10-point Prime Minister's plan. So there's lots of opportunities coming out of that. I've just listed a couple here. David's going to talk to housing. It's going to be picked up by Damon a bit later, and just more new, but that's not everything by any means. And then I also wrote down there's an opportunity around, I think, existing BenComs to collaborate in new ways to deliver these next wave of opportunities. Potentially, particularly as well, these sort of plug-ons to other things than rooftops coming into existing. My PC is running very low. Sorry, I've just realised I might die in a second. I'm going to get my power pack in a sec. So I'll leave this slide where it is. Run and get my power pack because I really am about to die of battery. Sorry. I'll be back in 30 seconds.
Okay. Right. We're going to carry on. Really, the natural extension to this is, well, the rooftops is the presentation we're going to follow up with by Derek about local energy supplies. Because when you've got all the rooftops set up, that's always the puzzle to me, is how do you then use that energy that you've created, especially if it's disparate, especially if it's spread out amongst a wider geographical area. And I hope we're going to talk about that. I'm looking at the roof of Tom Burnett's house. So here he is. He's coming back now.
I'm almost plugged in. Sorry, I thought it was going to be enough to last me through, but it wasn't. Yeah, okay. That was a really quick canter through that, and maybe more of a sort of way to open up a discussion with other people's sort of how they've gone on with it all.
Okay, there's something on chat from Catherine. Catherine, are you muted? Do you want to just talk to that for a second, or for a minute or two?
Yeah, it was just to flag it as a risk that, you know, the early movers have been community groups because of the nature of the way we're set up and the volunteer input. So the economies have worked with the additions of grants. Now that solar does work, investment is a wash. Not just in the UK, in fact, right across Europe. And as Tom said, the market is extremely competitive now. So if any of these sites are to be saved, literally saved, for the benefit of communities, we need to move really, really fast, because Macquarie Group is setting up consultancies here who are literally cherry picking. I've been approached several times by investment companies to say, oh, by the way, if you get any really big sites, please come and use us. But it's private sector, so there's a risk there.
Yeah, I think that's right. What I would say is that potentially community energy gives it, if it's the same PPA price, then community energy with its sort of better community benefit provides a reason for going with that provider. But I just think the reality is that community energy is very hard for it to compete with Macquarie.
Yes. Keith, could you mute yourself, please? Because we hear it when you move around. And sorry, you're not muted, that's all. Please raise your hand when you do. Thank you, when you want to talk. Right, I'm sorry for that. Thank you very much for that presentation about rooftops, which is, again, we'll be able to save because Pete West is recording all this. Should we move on then to Derek Moss, who's going to tell us about local energy supply to local households?
I'm certainly going to try. I'm trying to share my screen first. We've got some pretty pictures. So I'm also from, oh, no, Pete's disabled my participant share screen sharing.
Yeah. We have to do it one at a time. I'm very depressed when we just see screen share. When you finish the conversation, someone else is talking. All right, now I can see you and I can see your screen sharing.
Okay, so yeah, I'm also from Dorset Community Energy, along with Tom and Henry, who you didn't hear from earlier because he couldn't get his microphone working, and Pete. So as Tom said, we've recently done 600 of a 700 kilowatt installation, but before that, we'd done a 400 kilowatt installation. This is a pretty picture of one of the 400 kilowatt ones. So the original 400 were the sort of the old model, subsidised by the feed-in tariff, giving electricity away for free. The second set, the one that Tom was talking about a minute ago, there we go. It's one of the examples. It's one that was finished a couple of weeks ago. Is Bridport Hospital. These ones, we were selling the electricity at a discount, but we still had to sell the electricity to the houses, to the host buildings. But we got the grants from Dorset, Low Carbon Dorset, which made it all viable. So we sort of casting off into the future. We thought the grants weren't going to be there very long. Obviously, the feed-in tariff has gone. We needed to find a way to make a model sort of sustainable so that we could keep investing in solar PV. And one of the things that's sort of been explored, and Damon's going to talk about in a minute, and the site Damon's going to talk about is literally to the left of that, just beyond the trees on the left of that picture. But the other thing we talk about is energy local. So the problem that we'd found is that we couldn't really get solar PV arrays to stack up financially so that we could offer the 5.5% return to our shareholders, members, as we'd previously done. So, and essentially a lot of other commercial installers have found the same thing. So the problem was that renewable energy is still expensive. Electricity sold to the grid, even with the smart export guarantee, is still only sort of 5p if you're exporting. So unless you had a host building that could use all of the electricity, you got very long paybacks. So this is also sort of megawatt scale, small field stuff. Yeah, anything up to below about 20 megawatts, my understanding is, yeah, it's still much longer paybacks than that. But if you use electricity yourself, or you can sell electricity to a host building, or you can get a grant, then paybacks come down, you can make the investment, it's all rather good. So Dorset Community Energy, we've been using two of those things. We've been using selling electricity and using grants. But independent generators who just wanted to, say, build a few hundred kilowatts in a field, or put a big solar panel array on a house that don't use much electricity during the day, they can't benefit from any of those things. So the key variable is how much money you can get for exporting to the grid. We needed to find a way of getting it above the 5p you can get from either the wholesale market or from smart export guarantee. So that figure, the 5p, is obviously a lot less than the 15 to 20p people buy electricity in at. And the difference is partly genuine. It's the genuine cost of the grid. It's the cost of administering the bills. It's the cost of the green taxes, the sort of the feed-in tariff, stuff like that, and the eco funding. But also some of it is profit for the energy suppliers. However, there is a loophole in the supply regulations which allows direct trading of renewable energy. So you can, instead of a generator selling at 5p and someone literally next door buying at 15p, there is a way that you could sell directly and split the difference. And that is essentially the sort of key, the main bit of the energy local model. And energy local is a thing we'll come on specific in a minute. So to be able to do it, it has to be local. So if you're going to have a direct trading, a sort of split the difference price, it's got to be across one substation, across an 11 kilovolt to 33 kilovolt substation. Effectively, that means a small town. So if you've got a small town with some renewable energy generation, it is possible to potentially locally trade the electricity, split the difference, the generators get more money, the demands get cheaper electricity. It all needs to be at low voltage, so we're limited to the size of things that can happen. This thing you come on, you see in a minute, there's going to effectively a little mini subsidy, but it only applies to small scale stuff because of the voltage limits. You can't have megawatts and megawatts of renewable energy. It's sort of limited to about 250 kilowatts because of the way the loophole and the rules work. The trading needs to be with one organization, so you can't just have one person with some solar panel on their roof but not using any electricity, just chucking it out, and then a factory nearby using it, because they're two separately legal entities. It's all got to be done with one legal entity, which effectively means everyone's got to join a club. In the case of an energy local club, it's a cooperative society. To form a legal entity, so basically everyone who wants to sell electricity or buy electricity all needs to join in to one place. There is one example of these, hopefully many of you have heard of it. It's called the Energy Local Club. It's a co-op set up in Bethesda in Wales. I think it was a National Trust site, a 100 kilowatt hydro scheme. They set up a cooperative based around the hydro scheme with, I can't remember how many it was, 100 or so houses. So the houses can buy the electricity direct from the hydro scheme, so they get cheap electricity, and the hydro scheme gets a bit more money for what it's generating and exporting. So essentially, there is a potential for a win-win situation. Effectively, everybody wins by cutting out middlemen and avoiding essentially the markups. For various reasons, that one in Wales wasn't directly repeatable, but there are other projects being tested in Wales. There's two sort of slowly being tested at the moment. However, obviously stuff in Wales doesn't help us in Dorset, so we wanted to set up our own one. So we decided on Bridport. Bridport's a sort of a quite green-leaning town. It's had 2, if not 3, of our community energy rooftop PV arrays. And critically, it's already got a wind turbine. It's only a 50 kilowatt wind turbine, but for us in Dorset, that's enormous. So the aim was we set up a club to do a test, so basically a pilot project. Could we sell electricity from that wind turbine into a club of local members, trade it directly, get the turbine owner more money for his output, and save people money on their bills? The turbine owner signed up. We got a bit of money from the Power to Change to do some feasibility studies. We did a bunch of public events, and this is an example of us on the streets of Bridport. We were aiming for, we thought it might take a couple of months to get 50 or so interested households. In the end, in a couple of weeks, we got 90. So there's a huge demand for this, people being genuinely interested in the chance to save chance to save money on electricity bills, and to help renewable energy. The help renewable energy bit was the main motivator of most of the people I talked to personally, but it definitely wasn't for everyone. So how it would work in this case, so the wind turbine owner has to sign up to a Octopus Energy. So all of this is based upon a friendly energy supplier. At the moment, it's Octopus Energy. Everyone in the club, all the demands and the generators, have to sign into a club, and then the demands have to sign up to a time of use tariff. All of this is to do with time of use, half-hourly trading at real time. When the turbine is generating, it's a pure export turbine. The output is split across everyone in the club who has a demand, so they all get equal benefit. The energy is then traded at, well, it's 9.5p. We said it's sort of just below halfway between the two. So the generator, instead of getting his 5p export, gets 9.5p. The demands, instead of having to pay 15, 16, 17p per kilowatt hour, pay 9.5p. So they're making savings. That's on the proportion that is traded. Obviously, the turbine doesn't provide all the power needed by the demands because it's not always working. And so the excess demand is met by Octopus. So from their point of view, they are losing out on the proportion of the energy that is traded, but they are getting effectively some free marketing because people are signing up to them. So it's not just a win-win, it's a win-win-win. Everybody wins, it's brilliant. Just to stress, it's just a financial and legal arrangement. There's no actual engineering changes involved. So as a pilot study, just how we've got to, COVID got in the way. It's all been delayed by about a year. We should have the first 14 or 15 houses signed up to get electricity from the turbine and save a bit of money in January time, might be February. But that's just a pilot project to just show that it works, basically. And the benefit is it keeps money in the local economy. The big thing, the interesting thing is, if a load of daytime demand joins the club, there is effectively a 4.5p feed-in tariff subsidy for anyone who can generate and export electricity during the day, in this case. So we're hoping that's going to lead to, eventually, people installing solar PV on their own houses' roofs and selling into the club. The town council are already looking at a PV array on some carports. And then we, Dorset Community Energy, have got some more money from the RCF, I think it was RCF, to do a feasibility study into a ground-mounted PV array to feed into the club. So we've identified a couple of sites. We've done some initial feasibility studies, just going into stage 2 of that. So we're going to get pre-planning advice. We've got grid costs. It's looking reasonably good that at least one of them will be viable in terms of connections and planning. So in the next year or so, what we're hoping is we'll get some data on demand signed into the club. We'll do lots of modelling to show it's worthwhile. And then we'll build a 250 kilowatt ground-mounted array to feed into the club. And if all goes well, hopefully it rolls on, because people will see, oh, hang on, there's a benefit to being in these clubs that get cheap electricity. So more people sign up, so there's more demand, so you get more renewable energy being built, more people see about it, and it rolls on. And then we have had requests from people all over Dorset to have clubs set up nearby. But in reality, it's going to be sort of a year or so until we get a new generation in Bridport, and then it'll be sort of the following year, 2022, before we set up anything anywhere else. It's an awful lot of things. I've said stuff very quickly, so I'm going to stop there. It's just it is RCF that funded our feasibility study. I'll stop there and answer some questions, and Pete can also answer questions because he knows more about this than I do, but he's very politely let me do the talking.
That's very impressive. I didn't realise that you didn't need any additional technology. It was just a matter of the legal and the
Well, so there is some technology. You need a smart meter in every house and a tiny little bit of extra kit that goes on top of the smart meter, a little box. I can't remember what it's called, a cam. Don't remember what it stands for. But actual physical stuff, cables and things and switch gears, there's nothing for that. It's just a legal thing.
Does anybody have any questions? Oh, I can't see if you put hands up.
Peter's got his hand up, so I'm happy. Peter?
Thanks, Derek. Really good, again, really exciting stuff, and clearly it offers a huge amount of potential. I'm just wondering what your view of the Elexon review is. Elexon have identified the loophole that you flagged as a loophole, the whole complex site issue, and it seems from inside kind of view that they're very keen to squash the loophole because it effectively enables us to avoid paying a range of costs, which they're obviously keen to ensure that doesn't continue and allow to grow. I mean, have you got any view as to whether you think that review is likely to be successful, whether you think if it is successful, your model is still robust and will still be able to survive the removal of the complex site loophole?
I'm afraid the question is going to be quicker than the answer, which is, I don't know.
Derek,
but it looks like Pete's got something to say about it.
Yeah, I'd chip in here then. Yeah, I did respond to the Elexon consultation, Pete, and I mean, I had a fairly nice email back from them actually, but what I was flagging up is actual market opportunities here. I gave an example, two good examples actually. One was my sister lives in Western Australia, and there's a very progressive electricity supply company with 1 million customers, the biggest one in Western Australia. It's actually a cooperative itself. And what they're doing now is installing community batteries, where instead of needing a battery in your own house if you've got PV, you can rent space in a battery which is supplied by the utility company. And it's a lot cheaper than having a battery in your own house. And they're using exactly the same metering technology to measure how much people put into the community battery and how much they take out. So it's really developing new market opportunities. The other big one is the EU. I mean, basically the Renewable Energy Directive, which Elexon really want to be quite closely linked to, says specifically about energy communities that legislation has to be passed in the 27 member states by middle of 2021 to enable local trading of electricity. So it's the direction of travel in the rest of Europe. And why would the UK want to take back control and do nothing?
Pete looks like he's got something to say back.
Well, I think that's a really optimistic a view which I would really hope to be able to share. I did get really excited about Energy Local, and I do think it's a really exciting model if it could be made to work, or variations of it. I'm just kind of conscious that Elexon do have a very different view, backed up by Ofgem, of how market, how grid prices need to be shared. And regardless of what the EU say, I'm not sure that the UK market will necessarily follow exactly. And there are different ways of interpreting energy communities directive, which doesn't necessarily lend you to kind of ending up with the Energy Local outcome. So I don't want to pour cold water on it, because I think it is really exciting and I'd love to be able to do it. I'm just wary that we don't get carried away too much without actually kind of being conscious that there is this process going on. And so we need to be looking at ways of trying to make your model really robust so it can withstand the changes that Elexon might bring to it.
I think the note of caution is very sensible. So yeah, we could have set up 20 of these by now if we wanted to. And we could have signed up hundreds of people into the clubs, but we've tried to be very careful. So it's limited to one generator, 50 houses to start with, and then it might be one other generator, maybe two. But yeah, it seems there is an unknown variable there that I'm not sure what the timescales are on Elexon's response, but we'd want to know more about it before we moved on to a second club or a third club, or indeed probably invested huge amounts of money on anything more than the 2 generators for this club.
I can see 2 hands up. Susan wants to ask a question or speak. Susan? Susan, is she there? I don't know who's... It just says Susan. What about David and Carolyn? They have.
It's Susan Jonas here.
Right.
I just wondered what the implications for the of all this was with the local electricity bill, which is sort of wending its way through Parliament, and whether that's going to be. I mean, I had understood from it that it was going to be really helpful to projects like this, but I don't know what you think about that.
So I'll give an initial answer. It will probably be wrong, and then Pete can correct me. My very limited understanding is that the local electricity bill tries to do something similar, but it's not anywhere near as helpful because of the way that billing works and cash flow works and stuff. So in this model, basically, Octopus take all the risk, credit risk, and do all the billing and stuff, and just the club members just benefit from it. But there's no need for any club members or anything to do lots of billing. Whereas I think the Energy Local Bill is aiming at setting up local suppliers that have to do all that. I'm not totally sure. So yeah, I'm not sure if Pete's got something more informed to say.
No, I would agree with you, Derek, and say to Susan, the local electricity bill would be a great step forward, but the actual practicalities of actually being able to do metering and billing, a community energy group to be able to do metering and billing and have that software available, and to take on that risk of actually the cash flow with, you know, having people that you supplying electricity and basically having to collect payment for them retrospectively, it would be problematic. But again, it's the same as what Pete Capener was saying, it's the same direction of travel. I just feel slightly more optimistic than Pete Capener, especially at the European level. I know they are struggling, but there's a lot of really good activists there trying to move this forward.
Yeah, I think we Dorset Community Energy would definitely not want to be doing billing and running a supply company. It was way beyond what we can do.
Yeah. Okay, David and Carolyn, did you have something you wanted to ask?
Right. Yes. What I was going to say was, obviously, well, around here there are a number of sites generating PV and what have you, which we could possibly tie in. But of course, they've all got feed-in tariffs and things like that. Would that affect how much you're paid, or does that? Because what you're talking about is new installations post-fit. And I wonder what the situation is regarding existing generators.
So the wind turbine's a good example. The wind turbine is fit subsidised, so the generation tariff is completely unaffected by this. If an existing generator has fit registration, their generation tariff is completely unaffected. They will currently either get an export tariff or a power purchase agreement for their export. That's the thing that would need to change. It would have to be signed over to Octopus and into the Energy Local Club. So the main bit of earning, the generation tariff, is completely unaffected.
That's good, because there is a number of people around here. There's not a lot of spare in a 1.3 megawatt roof installation I'm involved with. Another one's got 200, and they don't use theirs nearly as much. We've got 7 down the road. There's another 25, which all run on the Henstridge, which is where we are, substation. So that would actually work. So maybe that's worth looking at.
Yeah, the big one, the megawatt one, probably wouldn't work because of the voltage at which it's probably connected, but the others would be good. Yeah, again, but there's the good thing, which it would keep some money in the local economy, but the better thing is you use them to get a club started, to then bootstrap more demand to lead to more generation. But again, I wouldn't commit too much until we see what Elexon are going to say.
Yeah.
But it's definitely worth thinking about in the future. Wait until we see how Bridport goes, see what Elexon say, but otherwise it sounds like an excellent opportunity to start.
Can you give us a link, perhaps in the notes, about how we can find out more about Electron? Because you all know a lot about it. But
so Elexon is I think it's a private company that runs all the balancing of the national grid.
Yes.
So they're the one that, Pete, well, someone in a minute, when I've stopped talking, I'll put a link in the grid to them themselves. I have to confess I hadn't heard of this particular review, so I won't know exactly where that is.
I mean, I'm incredibly impressed, and I'm just thinking, am I right that if you live within one substation, you can do something like you've done in Dorset Community Energy, but if you want to go wider than that, you'll have to be a lot more complicated.
So there's one club. So for this to work, you have to be a legal entity. A legal entity is a club, which is effectively a co-op, and it has to be centered around one substation, which is an 11 kilovolt to 33 kilovolt substation. So one small town. Each small town will have one of those. A big town, a big city. So Salisbury might have 2, 3, I don't know.
Yeah.
But Dorchester's got 1. Yeah. Caroline's had her hand up. Caroline Lanyon.
Yeah, I wanted to ask the question. I didn't know what Elexon was, and
Let's just put a link in the chat. Thanks, Damon.
Sorry.
But Damon has just put a link in the chat so people can follow that if needs be. But sorry,
And you can click on save, but do carry on what you were saying.
That was the question I wanted to ask, but now it's been answered. But I want to know what kind of interest they have. Do they make a lot of money out of this?
Who's the they?
Alexon.
Alexon was out of the club that we're doing. No, they don't make any money out of it at all.
Yeah,
the whole point is.
I mean, are they interested in trying to stop this loophole because it's going to affect their profits in some way?
Okay, well, I would suspect that, I don't know what their profits are or their turnover, but I suspect this would be a vanishingly small, tiny amount, even if we set up 20 clubs across Dorset, because each club could only have a few hundred members, and so it would be tiny. However, that's not necessarily the logic about how a decision would be made.
So
we need to squash this because of the implications elsewhere. But okay, I haven't read
I'm just trying to wonder. I'm wondering why they want to stop it.
Philosophically driven.
Okay, I mean, I'm quite focused in Salisbury right now on trying to get our local. He's a minister, John Glenn MP, to agree to the supporting the local energy bill in principle, because we thought local electricity bill in principle, because we thought that this might help community energy groups to do more of what they want to do. But having heard that you think that it won't make any difference, that is worrying. So maybe there's another issue here which has to be lobbied about the Alexon effort to try and stop this loophole.
Agree with you in two ways. Firstly, I think lobbying to stop this Alexon shutting this loophole, definitely. But secondly, I think whilst we at Dorset Community Energy wouldn't be keen to be exploiting the local energy bill, other groups which are much bigger might be more suitable to it. We're just sort of 6 volunteers with a few rooftops. So some bigger organisations with many more members and permanent members of staff might be able to do it, and it might help. So it in itself is not a bad thing. I think it's just not necessarily relevant to the scale that we can operate on. But if Alexon are going to seriously try and close this loophole, then lobby on that. Absolutely brilliant. Yes.
Okay, I've got one more question, because we're a community energy group, and we were set up to generate energy. Have you had to modify your terms of reference or anything like that to run something like this?
Well, so in terms of running it, all Dorset Community Energy have done have applied for a grant to do a feasibility study. The actual club is an entirely separate legal entity set up to run, so it's not really anything to do with DCE. Once it's up and running, Dorset Community Energy would, if we're involved at all, build some generation to sell into the club. And in that case, it's just the same as normal, so there's no need to change anything.
Okay, so it's a separate organisation. Pete Kapner, do you have anything else to add to all that?
I was just putting a note in the chat. I assumed you wanted to carry on with the meeting rather than get into a detailed discussion about Alexon. I'm very happy to carry on if you want me to, but
well, we're officially in our coffee break now, which is informal chat or leaving to go and make yourself a cup of coffee. Pete West and I were discussing how we would do this, and obviously we can't all chat because that doesn't go with Zoom. But if you want to, does anybody have any burning questions, anything you want to raise? If you're happy to come on explaining about Alexon, that would be great. And if anybody wants to,
I've got a suggestion. David Saunders has been trying to ask a specific question of me, so why don't I just quickly answer his one, and then we can switch to Peter talking about Alexon.
Okay, thanks.
But you need to unmute yourself, David.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a bit of both. I was at a Community Energy England event, and Lockleys Love Solar has been trying to explore both energy sharing and billing for self-use. Patrick Alcorn, head of local energy at Bays, came in and said, we've been noticing what local groups are trying to do to get generation behind the meter, and we will act to stop this. So that's the sort of official view. And later on, he said, let me explain, and you may not like this, but he said, London cannot generate all its energy, so we need the national grid to feed London, and everybody's got to pay for it. And I thought, you buggers. London gets all the cream economically, and then wants us to pay for its energy. But I think this is a fight worth fighting. And I think it's one that we will eventually win around, but we will have to ride with the punches over the next years, I think.
I think, Peter, also just put something in the chat which might be slightly more optimistic. I didn't quite read all of it.
Yes, he says they're not concerned about their profits. They're concerned about ensuring what they see as whole system costs are shared. That makes sense, I suppose.
I'm not sure that's all that positive.
Okay. I didn't read the second half. I only saw the first bit flash up.
It's not their profits they're concerned about. That if we're going to be honest with ourselves, and it's helpful to be honest because it means that it gives us insight into what's likely to happen rather than what we would like to happen. And by saying we give ourselves the power to set electricity prices that consumers get. So we say, okay, you don't have to pay 15p, you're only going to pay 9p or 9.5p. That's great for us. From generators' point of view, we get more money. But somewhere along the line, there's 6p that has been lost out of the system. And it's not, the amount of profit that the suppliers get is a fraction of that. I mean, it's less than a penny. It's very low margin business. And I'm not trying to be an apologist for the energy supply industry here. I'm just trying to be realistic that if we give ourselves the power to set electricity prices, then there are going to be whole system costs that make up that 15p that are going to fall on other consumers. And Patrick's point is that you could end up, if you don't have electricity generating system in your area, you could end up not paying 15p, but you could end up paying 18p or 19p, which from a fuel poverty perspective is going to cause real problems. So there is an equity issue here that as community groups, I think we have to kind of embrace and understand. So that's not to say that there isn't value in what you're doing, because I think there is the real value is the difference between the transmission costs and the distribution costs. We don't, if we're supplying electricity locally, we don't have to pay the costs, the transmission costs of supplying it to John O'Groats. And that's the real cost saving around local generation. It's not as much as 6p, but it is substantive. And so I think that the model that you're demonstrating is brilliant because it'll point the way, as Pete was saying earlier, to the market shift, which I think if we're going to be transparent around electricity costs will give us value, but perhaps not as much as we're seeing in Dorset.
Yeah, I just completely agree. Facts are really important, and that is definitely a thing. Yeah, I would say if Elexon or whoever shut this loophole down, it's not going to be because there will be a direct impact on cost elsewhere, because the flow rates through these clubs are absolutely minuscule compared to the total flow rates. They want to shut it down because of the implication if it grew. It's not, that's the point. Like Damon sort of said something in the background, and he said I can't remember what the word you used, but it's a philosophical point. It's not a practical point or a financial point. Damon, what was the word you used?
They're philosophically driven to share costs equitably across whole society and not allow individual communities to do better for themselves.
So I think, and if they want to make that decision, fair enough. But I think there's no risk that by setting up a few of these clubs, we're going to drive up costs elsewhere. In real life, if we set up thousands of them,
well, I think that is the point. That if we make something mainstream where we can sell electricity at 9.5p, then it's going to expand like wildfire. And I think people are looking at it and seeing what would happen if this rolled out across the whole country, not just what's happening in Dorset. Which
then there would definitely be a problem.
Has marginal impact, yeah.
Well, where does that leave us? I mean, do we set up our local schemes and pat ourselves on the back for a couple of years until it gets sorted out, or what?
Personally, I think this is the whole area of peer-to-peer trading, the ability to sell electricity from one generator to a consumer is going to be the future, as Peter was saying, Pete West was saying. I think it is really important future for community energy. It's what's going to make our projects really stack up in the future. I just think, I think we've got to be as robust in the models that we develop which is really difficult given that the market is shifting so much. So if the energy local model is working, then great, let's use it for as long as we can. It would be good to know what the Alexon timescale is, because I think their consultation is operating now. It will take time. If they make a decision to close something down, it will take time to do that. So it's not going to happen immediately.
So we should get on that bandwagon soon.
Well, yeah, I think it would be worth also looking at other models for peer-to-peer trading that are out there. As well as energy local, so that you've got a fallback position if Alexon kind of blocks it. We've got somewhere to go, so we're not putting all our eggs in one basket.
Well, so DCE definitely aren't. We're also progressing other things as well. This is just this was sort of a small thing might lead to the future. Others, but yeah, completely agree with everything Peter just said.
It's really interesting, and it's really worth sharing amongst our whole community. And thank you for bringing that. It's a lot of, it's good to have the people who know what they're talking about telling the rest of us where we can think about heading.
Assuming being Peter and Peter.
No, I think what you're doing is really exciting. I'm really keen to make sure that I'm not kind of just pouring cold water on what you're doing, which is brilliant.
I think pouring cold water on the thoughts that we might expand it to gigawatts across the country is definitely good, but we were never thinking of that scale anyway. Pete, had something to say? Sorry, I seem to have taken over chair. Sorry.
Yeah. No, so carry on. Who is it?
Pete West's got his hand up.
Just a little bit to chip in again if it's just informal discussion, but following on something what David Saunders posted there, with all this equality and making sure everybody pays, I'm almost certain that some of these large electricity companies like Empower are using huge tax avoidance and not hardly paying any tax at all. So really, I wouldn't mind at all if it was more of a level playing field where these larger companies were actually paying their share instead of just picking on tiny little community groups.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Right. Brian Matthews, you had something to say.
Yeah, I was just wondering, what is the current state of play with discussions with National Grid over this? Because surely they should be the ones to coordinate what's going on. I mean, effectively, what Wessex Community Energy is like, it's a pressure group to that. But if we're going to see fair distribution, fair working of the electricity generation, the whole thing, it's a debate that needs to involve National Grid. Thoughts?
What Peter will want to say, but I'll just say briefly, on our scale, it's got nothing to do with National Grid. Western Power Distribution would be slightly involved in terms of the hardware of where stuff's installed, but essentially it's between the supplier and Ofgem to determine the rules as to whether or not this is called, it's called a complex site. That's the key bit, is between the supplier and Ofgem. But yeah, Peter, sorry, I jumped in. You probably know more about this than I do.
Yeah, David and Caroline said they think Tesla's hatching a similar pooling energy scheme. And I've heard of schemes where you involve it with people with cars and batteries and things. So it's just an extension of this, or
that's sort of a separate thing. So I don't think I answered Brian's point. Peter probably understands more to answer the question about National Grid and their involvement in at least the decision about Alexon and the loophole and complex sites.
Okay, Pete Kapner.
So yes, Alexon are part of the whole electricity system. They balance electricity on the network and make sure that we're kind of the energy suppliers remain in balance with the electricity they buy and sell. So they're an integral part of the system and separate to National Grid. As far as I'm aware, National Grid aren't involved in this process. Ofgem are. Ofgem have a very definite view, as Damon implied earlier. They have a very philosophically driven view about a level playing field. They define level playing field in a very strange way, but so it's Ofgem and Alexon that will be kind of principally involved in this decision, as opposed to National Grid. So they will be Ofgem are ultimately the people that we need to be lobbying. Unfortunately, Ofgem will always push responsibility onto government, because effectively they're set up with political guidance around their priorities by government. So ultimately it is government that we need to be lobbying in order to create more kind of equity at a community level, as opposed to across the whole system.
Peter, my request then, because I wear several hats, if you like. I'm a Wiltshire councillor. I'm also a parliamentary spokesperson for North Wiltshire. But I've got links through, if you like, through that to my own members of parliament, as we all do, but that's what I'm trying to do, is could we as Wessex Community Energy produce something, an idiot's guide, if you like, for politicians to say, this is what we need, this is what we would like to see in the future. Because I'm afraid most of us, well, people like myself, are not experts. You guys are. And perhaps there could be a group from within this group of those that really know what they're talking about, that could put together what you would like to see happen, and then we can help lobby on your behalf.
It's a really interesting idea. I wonder whether it would have even more clout if we went through Community Energy England, who already have quite good links both with regulator and government, and would help us draft. They have policy and strategy people as part of their team. But I do think it's an area that needs that sort of approach, Brian. I think that's a really...
I was wondering if we should set up a meeting specially to explain to all of us who know less, what you who know more, to explain the whole thing, national grid downwards, the implications of the changes and where we think it should go and where it might go. Do you think it'd be worth having a whole meeting on that? And then
I think that would be really, really useful. And please keep me posted on that. I'm afraid I've got to go because I've got something else happening. But thank you very much indeed, Leslie, for organising this and all of you being involved. All right, thank you.
Okay, but do people generally think that's a good idea if we have a meeting exactly about this, starting from national grid down to local networks? We're going to talk about local networks in a moment, microgrids.
Good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, Pete, we'll talk about that later. Pete West. You there, Pete?
Yeah. Yeah, from a personal point of view, I want to say, if we've got any Energy Local working in Bridport by February, I'd be absolutely keen, but I haven't really got the time to get involved in sort of research type of theoretical options. There is what might be useful. The local energy bill organisers are having a webinar next week. I'll post something in chat if you want to go and see their webinar about how the local electricity bill is planning to operate, because that's the same barriers there. Okay.
The evening of the 9th.
Go on.
That's on the evening of the 9th.
Evening of the 9th. I'll post something in the chat, Derek.
It would be good to assemble, if nothing else, a series of links to what Community Energy England is saying, what's in this next seminar, because this is really hugely significant for the advancement of our sector, isn't it?
I just wanted to say that if Community Energy England is solidly behind the local electricity bill, and it's being supported by an awful lot of organisations, good energy, several things, then I think it must be worth getting it in if we can, even if it doesn't actually answer everything that the Energy Local can do. It's certainly going to be another tool in the box that can be used, is it not?
Yeah, for me, I think it does no harm and could potentially be a significant benefit if it gets through. I think given the nature of the bill, it's likely to not get through in the current form, but that's just the nature of the way the bill's been presented. But the hope is that if it gets a lot of support, it will then create the political space for something to come in after it. So I think it's definitely worth supporting. I think what the webinar next week is slightly different from what I think Leslie was suggesting and people were sticking their thumbs up about, which was having a session of this group that just focused on the electricity system and the opportunities for community energy going forward, which obviously the energy local idea is a key part, but there might be other things as well that could be covered.
Could you send us links to anything you think is relevant, the local energy bill and so on, or could we post them between you, Pete West, Pete Kapner, any useful links? And we'll discuss later how we might have this general information session for us all. And if anybody's willing to volunteer, who knows, like you, Pete Kapner, who understands it from top to bottom, and how we could structure such a discussion. We'll have a discussion after this rather than now while we're all talking. But I think it would be useful just for us all to learn.
I think there are people that we could bring in and
suggestions would be very welcome.
Well, Mary, the lady who set it all up, the energy local bit, she's the key person to get in. I'm sure she'd be happy to come and talk.
She'd be great. Yeah.
Great. So can you send us that either on the meeting notes or a link so that we can talk about it later rather than now? Because I think we ought to, I don't know if you've had a coffee break, anybody, but we ought to move on because we've got Damon talking to us about microgrids, which is surely part of the same thing, really, isn't it?
Yes, quite right. Yeah, Derek has introduced my talk for me. Thanks, Derek. By explaining everything. Am I able to share my screen?
Yeah, you should be able to, Damon.
Cool. Let's see if it works. Yeah, just let me know when you can see things.
Yep, it's working.
Cool. Okay, great. So I'm going to talk about the primarily actually the Hazelmead microgrid in Bridport, right next to the hospital that Dorset Community Energy has put rooftop solar on, and also obviously in the same town, Bridport, as Derek's energy local project. And it said it really was a direct introduction because I'm going to tell you about a different loophole in the energy system that lets us achieve exactly the same things that Derek just spoke about with Energy Local, with respect to generation being shared across different rooftops and being able to split the savings across different parties. This loophole is the license exemptions. So the energy license exemptions there's a supply exemption, a distribution exemption, and a generation exemption, and they have been in the legislation since 2001, updated in 2011, and they're primary legislation, so they're actually much harder for Alexon and Ofgem to mess with because primary legislation needs a legislative response. The big catch with these license exemptions is the one we are using, the loophole we're using requires owning the physical grids across all of the different properties, which is obviously very difficult to achieve, and it's practically impossible to achieve if that grid is already owned by somebody else. So, for example, Western Power Distribution, they won't give it back, and as David Saunders mentioned, they make good profits from those grids. But on new build housing, if you can get hold of the grid before it is adopted by the distribution networks, and you can retain ownership of it in community ownership, then you can take advantage of the license exemptions, and you're able to act very freely up to a level of 2.5 megawatts, which is about 500 homes, or we just think of it as a single substation sized development. So what does that let you do, and what are we specifically doing? So we're working with the thanks to the ERDF fund and Low Carbon Dorset on proving out the idea of retaining ownership of a local grid on 50 homes in Bridport, 53 homes in Bridport at the Hazelmead development. and we're working on that with Bridport Co-housing. And it was initially supported by an RCF grant from Dorset Community Energy last year, and subsequently this year by Microgrid Foundry, which is an organisation set up to fund these grids. So I'll skip through some very quick points actually. Why are we doing this? We are trying to build new housing that is net zero for operational carbon from day one. So we want to, when you're building new housing, let's have that have no impact on the carbon emissions. And the way you do that is by filling those new houses, filling their rooftops with solar and installing heat pumps, which reduce the electricity demand or the energy demand for heating in those buildings. So it's lots of solar and lots of heat pumps. But you need to do that without putting the house prices up, which is the hard part. And house prices have continued to rise, and it puts houses out of the reach of consumers. So we're working on keeping all of those assets in community ownership, which means communities can bring cash to the capital cost of those assets. So rather than them being on individual houses, if they're all with the community. So we can talk about community solar on the rooftops, community battery storage, say one large battery for a whole site, and community heat networks, which would be the heat production and community ownership as well. And we've set up the Microgrid Foundry, which is an organization to do the hard work on this, which is really the first few years of new build during the construction phase, ensuring the grids end up in local ownership and being able to maintain and operate them and handle billing. Those are the hard parts. Once they're up and running, then it's easier from that point in time. So yeah, primarily there's two projects that are underway, constructing one in Bristol and the Hazelmead project. Hazelmead looks like this right now. This is a few weeks ago. It is the site's cleared and there will be houses soon. But by the end of next year is when the first houses might be handed over, or actually early 2022 more likely. That's the point when we'll essentially know whether we've been able to hold on to these grids and create a microgrid. Microgrids look like this. This is the sort of day-to-day work at the moment, is figuring out where the wires are going, how they're going to be connected, how they're going to be owned, who's going to build them, the legal agreements around adopting them. So that's the work that's ongoing at the moment on a day-to-day basis at this project. And just to sort of visualize it for you, the one we're building in Bristol would look like this eventually, little batteries at community scale outside houses, linking all the sites. Yeah. How did I do? That was that 10 minutes or longer? I'm not sure.
That was great. That's very interesting. Has anybody got any questions? I noticed it's Tesla there. Somebody mentioned Tesla earlier. So Tesla are getting involved in the batteries there, in the microgrid systems.
Yeah, that's right. Tesla are the battery maker who are essentially easiest for us to work with. They've got the best warranties. They've got the best distribution networks. They've got the most local on the ground service technicians when things break. So they're the no risk vendor on batteries at the moment.
Yeah, I see you're working with. Good. I see you're working with the Bristol Energy, Chelwood Community Energy, but are you working with councils? I mean, councils are being major new developers, aren't they? Are they interested in this kind of concept?
Lots and lots of people are interested in this. I'm really just asking people to watch these two projects we're building for now. It's a little like the energy local side of things. Really, we don't want to try rolling this out to gigawatts and thousands of sites until we see these small pilots working. And so, yes, lots of councils want to do things like this, but it's a bit too unproven, I think, at this stage. So we're sort of suggesting maybe people wait a little bit on trying to get new projects started along this line just now.
Okay, thank you. That was interesting. Does anybody have any questions, comments? I'm trying to look at gallery view and see if any hands are raised. Or look at Dave and Karen Nichols or Stuart Crocker. That hand's raised now, or was it from times before? Oh yes, there's Cecilia.
Hi, I'd just like to ask, why I can see you putting solar panels on these roofs, but why aren't these houses, your houses are being built with solar panels, but why aren't all the houses in the country, the new houses, having solar panels put on?
Well, I mean, that's the very problem we're solving or trying to solve with this initiative. Every house should have solar panels and every house should have a heat pump, and they won't. And they absolutely will not. And actually, we have lots of anecdotes of people buying a house in a new development and before it's built on spec and writing to the developer and saying, I want to give you £10,000 to put solar on this house you're going to build for me. And the developer's going, I wish we could do that, but it's simply not possible. And it's just it's to do with the way construction projects are run, and you've got to get in right at the beginning, bring the money to it, and work with them all the time to stop solar being written out, because it's just harder to do, slightly harder.
My other point was, are you putting electric vehicle charge points there?
So Hazelmead is going to have electric vehicle charging points in the South Car Park, and we're saving space for really high rapid charges in the north as well. And we're working with, or starting to discuss with co-cars, the idea of putting 2 cars there with the car club, electric cars with car club, all linked up into the microgrid.
We're going to talk about electric cars in a
That's
minute.
the key part.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Any more questions? I really do want to have a meeting that explains everything about the grid and sharing and everything. It seems complete sense, doesn't it, that every new development should be along the grounds you've just presented with a microgrid. Doesn't make any sense.
It's actually really difficult to keep stuff like this on track.
Okay, thank you for that. How are we doing for time? We're only about 10 minutes behind time. Gustavo, are you there somewhere? Are you going to tell us about your electric car club pilot?
Yep.
We can't see you.
My sharing activated?
Nothing's activated. I can't. All I can see is a camera with a line across it on your
You should be able to share, Gustavo. It's been enabled.
Okay. Can you see me now? Can you see the slides?
I can't.
No, we just see a grey screen with a camera, with a line through the camera.
Okay.
Have you clicked on share video or stop video? You still there, Gustavo?
Did you close your share screen, Damon? Did you close your screen sharing?
I can't see a screen share. I can see, I'm looking at gallery view and see everybody. But Gustavo, as you said, doesn't have a picture. He just has a camera with a line through it. Ah, now we're going.
Now we can see it, I think.
We can see screen sharing, yes.
Yes,
there we go. Yay, great. Yeah, so it's really interesting to hear from Damon there, and about getting co-cars built into it from the start. Co-cars have been great actually. They really know what they're doing, and they've offered to package up different bits of their offer to people. And I think, you know, in the long term, I guess we all have different perspectives, and one of the perspectives I guess that matters is what's best for the sector, what's best for the environment. And I guess at some point I would like to see them and us converge, probably us moving closer to them. But for now, what we're looking at is setting up our own car club. As some of you will know, we're Power to Change funded, which is to find new business models. It's not yet evident that this will be the big moneymaker to replace subsidies. At the moment, it looks like it'll provide services while covering its own costs. We're here to find what the appropriate scale is, and that involves sharing back office functions to reduce costs. And it looked like an opportunity for community energy organizations as electricity and transport converge. Particularly another Power to Change organization at Brighton is looking at how you get more, how you're able to sell more of your solar PV to cars, as they'll pay a little bit more. Obviously there's cost savings to the community, and the way we're doing this is developing partnerships and cooperative ownership of the technology. Our partner Derwent Valley Car Club has already been running for 7 odd years, and they managed to make it work in a sort of a low tech way, but they're looking to modernize a little bit. And as they look to find new sources, they're also interested in how we're working. So it's a little update of where we're at. We now have 2 locations, one at the top of the hill, one at the bottom of the hill. Walkability to the car club is pretty important. Both of those sites are council, which was a really straightforward and easy process. The Wiltshire Council was supportive. The Parish Council, which owned a sublease on the bottom of the hill, was also supportive. And so, there was some process to go through, but there was no obstacles or difficulties. We're both at 3-phase electricity. The one at the Natter Center is close to a school where Natter Community Energy has also got electricity. We have 2 sites, and we're trying 2 different charging models. And one of them, there's an organization called Charge My Streets, who will install, maintain, manage the charger at no capital cost. So their model is that eventually people will join their network and pay to charge if they don't have off-street parking of their own. So basically Tisbury now has a charger there, hopefully for life, that will be run and managed by them. We're also experimenting with a self-owned one. So costs between £6,000 and £8,000, not £6,000 and £8,000, between £6,000 and £8,000 to install. So that's all in the groundworks connection to install this EO charger. They're both 22 kilowatts. This EO charger is expandable, so it's only one charger at the moment that's dedicated to our car club. But in future, we might be able to add subsequent charging posts, and then the kind of smart software behind manages which car gets what. And so, we'll learn a bit about what it's like to manage our own chargers. And I guess there's a perspective from which, if you can, you'll want to hold on to your chargers, because they're the interface between 2 energy assets. The car battery on the one hand, and the rest of the grid on the other. The downside of that is then you've got management, maintenance, insurance, all those other sorts of costs become yours. And if you're not doing lots, it's probably just worth having someone else take over all the heavy lifting around Charge My Streets. We were banking on the secondhand car market, but prices have gone up. Our funding had capital expenditure limits, so we're sneaking in underneath them. But the trade-off is that we're probably not going to have the mileage that we would have liked to have on the cars. So part of this is around how we communicate things. Insurance was a massive pain. Even Co-Mobility, who are the shared mobility charity, weren't able to provide leads. A lot of insurers who said that they would insure on their brochures, when it came to it, hadn't actually been insuring anyone new for various years. We have managed to find it, but it comes at a price, which is expensive, and with conditions which include things like cameras and being able to monitor the driver behavior as we go. But we hope that as the fleet grows and our claims grow, this will come down. The biggest car clubs just self-insure. I guess the really exciting bit here is that how we do the bookings control and fleet management. So this allows us to do keyless access with an RFID card. So one tap of a card gets people into the car and starts the car, and that's all they need. They don't need to worry about where they leave their keys. They can operate it with their phone exclusively, but we have patchy phone reception, so we've gone for the RFID thing. And this platform that does all of this stuff, that also gives us the fleet management software, is owned by us in part. So we are share owners in a European platform cooperative, and which means that we have access to developers at salary costs rather than consultant costs. It means that all of the functionality is open to us rather than it being kind of a staggered pay structure, which means that it's infinitely adaptable. We can change it, and experiment week by week, month by month. It means that we can offer kind of rudimentary fleet management services to organizations, businesses that might want their car to be available to the public in the outside working hours, but reserved to their staff during the working hours. And so that might bring in additional revenue streams that are not tied to the high capital expenditure of the chargers and cars themselves. And yeah, so that little circle in the United Kingdom, that's us, part of the Europe, as I said, the European cooperative that has built up this platform. The advantages of being owners of this platform is that previous car clubs have had the technology bought out from underneath them. It means that we have a say and a vote and a share in how the technology platform is used. We get to determine the privacy of our members and how we approach that. And all these sorts of things are kind of within our control. We're stakeholders. And when I say we're stakeholders, I mean, it sits with Natter Community Energy at the moment, but the idea is to set up a multi-stakeholder co-op where other community energy organizations, other willing car clubs can join, and they equally get access to the services as members. They equally share in the IP. They equally have a stake and a vote in how the whole platform is developed. And I think I'm on 10 minutes. So that's just a rapid view of what it looks like. Top right-hand corner is the mobility factory who provide the technological platform. In the middle is whatever it is that we set up with members. And this can service both, for example, Derwent Car Club, Tisbury Electric Car Club, and any other car clubs that want to join. They will then get access to the bookings, to the access security, to the insurance, to the breakdown, to the mapping software, and then kind of the shared back office that brings down the costs. There we go, 10 minutes. And yeah, we're launching in January the 9th.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I'd muted myself temporarily. Tell me about how much interest there is locally. You've actually got 2 cars, have you? And have you got members? How many members do you have?
We'll have 2 cars in January. We got 50 expressions of interest in terms of membership, which is sort of where we need to be on the modeling to make it work.
Excellent. So yeah, does anybody have any other questions? I'm looking to see.
Could I ask?
Yes, I can see that. Stuart Crocker, and then we'll talk to David and Carolyn. Stuart?
Absolutely fascinating. Thank you very much indeed. Very, very interested in that. Can you just paint a picture for us, please, of your financial forecast that you've done over the next several years, how you think it's going to work out in financial terms, and how you might fund the financial risks involved? Can you tell us paint a picture for us in financial terms looking forward, please?
Yeah, sure. Just give me a second. So in general terms, we reckon that we get to break even once we have sort of 7 member clubs, around 14 cars. Sorry, I'm just trying to pull it up. The forecasting changes on an almost week by week basis as new costs come online.
Are you sharing screen? Well, we can't see anything. We can't even see you, Gustavo. David and Caroline.
I'm not intending to share a screen. I'm just looking
Okay.
for my.
David and Caroline, you had a question too?
Just to say that as parish councillors, our parish has just sought a grant to set up our own car share scheme. So whether Gustavo would like us to liaise with him with our information.
Yeah, that would be great. Do you know how you plan to setting it up? Have you got your locations and you've done?
Yeah, our locations are set up. Very similar to yours, actually. Two locations, both with charge points, and yeah, it's very similar to Tisbury's. So, but we're very much at the early stages yet.
Okay, Pete Kapner, you're muted at the moment. Yeah, Pete?
Yeah, not losing, kind of following up on Stuart's question about finances, but just wanted to check how the relationship with Wiltshire Council. You said one of them, at least one of the sites was their land. Do you have a lease arrangement with them, or what's the nature of the contractual deal that you have with Wiltshire?
Yeah, there are lease arrangements, and both of them are actually ultimately Wiltshire land. So the one at the Nada Centre was Wiltshire land, and we have a lease relationship with them there. It's a peppercorn rent. I think there are friendly break clauses, those sorts of things. And then the one at the bottom of the hill it's Wiltshire, but on a sublease to the parish. And so there was a little bit of extra gymnastics there that had to take place because the parish had just signed a new lease agreement themselves. But those were gymnastics that everybody seemed to be willing to undertake.
Can you share contacts with people in Wiltshire that you've been dealing with? We're doing a feasibility study around a similar scheme in Bradford and Avon, and
yeah, of course. I mean, the person who really helped push things forward for us was our local community engagement person, who's Karen Lineker. And I'll send this to you. John Price at the council itself was the officer who I think is on land and transport.
Great, thank you. That's really helpful.
I think generally now the councils are getting very sympathetic to our aims, aren't they? It's good. It's a good way forward. They didn't seem to have heard of us a few years ago, but now they realise that there's a lot. Community energy has got a lot to offer the wider community.
Was there anything else on Stuart's question you were going to follow up on?
Gustavo, you're about to share. Oh, thank you. Gustavo, you're sharing your screen.
Yeah. So there you go. Not everything is allocated in its correct point, but this is the reality we're still looking at. Is that with 5 schemes, we're still, not even breaking even.
You're not sharing the spreadsheet, Gustavo. You were just seeing your file manager.
So you thought a minute ago, updating the model. There
it is.
Sorry. Yeah, so see that down here, we're still, so on five schemes, it's still not quite there. I could change the assumptions and look down at the number of schemes, and I think so at 7 schemes, it starts to work a little better. I mean, keep in mind that these assumptions are changing the whole time, right? So I guess the big assumption that's to come is around the actual cost of the cars and then the actual insurance costs. Those are the 2 big kind of uncertainties. The other thing is that this financial modeling isn't really what I need to do. Is I need to split out the costs to the individual car club and then how that works with the umbrella. Because the ideal would be that the umbrella manages to take the back office work and reduce the staffing costs that each organization will have. I mean, really, the way that car clubs that have made it work, you know, like Derwent, who've been going for 7 years, is by reducing their operational costs, largely through involving the community and either taking care of the cars or running other services that use the car clubs. Yeah, I mean, and you know, and as I say, I see at some point perhaps a convergence with what co-cars are doing, just because they've got the scale. I think that we're struggling to see. I mean, I think even this kind of 7-car thing is probably optimistic. I mean, this question mark is actually the idea that kind of members of the organization would join, and then.
Gustav, if I lived locally to you and I wanted to join your car club, what would I have to do? What would it cost me, and how would it work?
So it would cost you £50 a year. You would, and then you'd pay £5 an hour
for using the car.
Yeah.
So you'd have to work out how many people you're going to have registered in your club before you get to your initial figures, haven't you? Yeah.
Yeah. And our assumption is working on 60 members per club.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's what I wanted to know, really.
60 members per club. And the thing with so the pricings and all these sorts of things are effectively infinitely flexible. So one of the delights of being part of this the Mobility Factory co-op is that you're a member of an organization that already has 10 other car clubs in it.
That's because of your European links. I mean, that's not going to be affected by Brexit. It is a stupid question, I hope.
I hope. I mean, it was a delight to see England pop up on the map of European countries, right, as we're about to disappear, I'm not going to lie. But so these guys are a community energy organization that started about 7 years ago to think about this, and then developed all of their own technology. So there are, as you see, there are, you know, a whole bunch of other groups, and the fun thing about all those other groups is they have all experienced very different things. You know, so some of them have set up things like getting so in some places the council has guaranteed a certain level of usership for the first 2 years to give nascent car clubs a sort of a runway to build up their membership and occupancy rates. In other places, they're trying charging based exclusively on energy use. You know, so that you're really tying that link to electricity and consumption, and then you're also probably helping out with insurance, because if you drive to preserve electricity, you're also driving more safely generally. You know, rapid acceleration burns energy. Suddenly decelerating means that your car can't do the regenerative stuff that it needs to do, and so kind of clever driving is also eco driving. You know, so there's lots of different models that different organizations that are members of this have tried. You know, so you're not flying blind, and I guess that's one of the fun things that you wouldn't necessarily get with a bigger organization that has I guess a less freedom at the front. I don't know. I guess that what I'm getting at is that this system is variable and able to reflect the needs of any locality and the desires of any particular locality to experiment with different setups. In other words, it's not a kind of a cookie cutter setup. You know, you can tailor the groups. You can across hours. You know, so you could say, people on this street get access to this car between the hours of 6 and 9. People on this street get access to the car between the hours of 9 and 12. So you get kind of this infinite flexibility. I think the key thing here, though, is that for it to work, there have to be enough of us. This blue circle here has got to represent enough of us. And ultimately, I think the idea is that the individual car clubs in each locality outsource a lot of the back office stuff to a to-be-formed organization, which at the moment consists of ourselves, of Derwent Car Club, anyone else who's interested in joining. Yeah, and it's out of that little blue dot that we can then all benefit from the back office stuff, but we're able to make it tailored to what our local needs are. You know, some places will already have their cars insured. Our insurance relationship now will allow us to offer other people insurance. This is at a time when people are really struggling to find insurance for this sort of a thing. We've been approached by councils, business development districts that have got cars, have had cars for 2 years, but haven't been able to find insurance for it. But we're able to kind of facilitate that as well.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much for that. Don't know if there are any more questions, but clearly if anybody around here is interested in setting up a car club, you're the person we need to go to for more advice and information. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We've actually reached the point in the meeting where, according to our agenda, we can have informal discussion and updates from attendees. So before we sort of sum up at the end, is there anything anybody's been really wanting to share with others? Anything they've been doing, anything they've found out about, anything we should know about? They're all focused on lunch now, I expect. No, I found this particularly interesting, and there's so much going on that we don't know about. We live in our own little bubbles now, especially now in the days of COVID. And there's a huge amount happening. What I would like to see as an outcome of this meeting, Pete, if we can arrange that, is first of all, you're going to tell us where we can see the recording. Secondly, I hope you've all been clicking on save the notes, because there's some good contacts there. Save chat. I don't know how they're saved. I'll have to find that out later. Does anybody know where they're saved? Anyway, it says save chat and you click on it. But I think, Pete, we have to produce a list of links that have come up during this meeting. And between us, we should plan a sort of seminar on understanding, so that anybody who wants to understand the nature of electrical distribution, really, and the changing nature of electricity, national, local, micro grid, where we can get references. Maybe it would be nice if somebody could explain it to us nice and coherently, step by step, top to bottom or bottom to top. Pete knows a lot about this, Kapner. We'll talk to you privately. Is there anyone else who's volunteering? Oh, hello, I haven't seen you before, Hugh. You just suddenly turned your camera on. Is there anyone else who's got anything they'd like to say about what we should do later, what they'd like to find out about, what information they want to share?
Before you go on, Leslie, I just want to mention that I haven't got the time personally to set up any sort of meeting about how grids operate. It might be worth talking to Regen. I mean,
Community Energy.
Basically, you know, Regen have done quite a lot of partnership working with energy supply companies, and maybe Pete Capner would know a bit more about that. But personally, if you're going to set up some sort of webinar on how the grid works and opportunities, personally, I can't really have the time to get involved with that. So.
We need the people who started us all off, West Mills, the sort of educational resources like about the grid, like they have about their own thing. That's yeah.
Regen would be, it's a very good suggestion. I think Regen would be good to involve, definitely.
Well, we'll do a little research about where we can find out more and how we might do it. Meanwhile, we will distribute all the links we've put into the chat and elsewhere. If anybody wants to add any other links they think would be useful, please add them to the chat now. Who says they want to be included in any mailing list, please? Education at WCEN.
That's me. Just because I think it's so important to be sharing things at this stage, and all these Zoom meetings that I've done, I've suddenly had access to all these fantastic people and all this knowledge that was just not there and available to me before as a teacher. And it's just, yeah, it seems to me a really powerful thing, and we really want to share, you know, your resources as well as our own. So yeah, if anybody wants to include me on anything, that'd be fantastic. And
we'll certainly add you in. And we'll link into Community Energy England and to Regen Southwest, who are all doing good stuff too, of course. So it's just where our local, well, we were local, now we could be anywhere now we're on Zoom, couldn't we? But
Leslie, the save chat is at the bottom
yes,
right-hand box. It's the 3 little dots.
yes. I've clicked on that several times. I wondered where it saves it to.
I think it said, oh, did it say a file or?
Saves it on your PC in a Zoom folder.
In the Zoom folder?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can click on show file and it'll show you the location.
Okay, that's great. Thanks.
So if I was the host, Emma, would it be, if I've just saved it now, would it be saved on my Zoom account?
I mean, it's saved mine to a local file on my PC, but it may well save it to your Zoom account as well.
Yeah, I was just thinking of maybe posting a link to it on the Wessex Community Energy Network website. And also, obviously, I'll place a copy of the recording on the Wessex Community Energy Network website as well.
Brilliant.
And you've all received an invitation, obviously, to this meeting, so you're all on our mailing list. If there's anybody who isn't on our mailing list, like we've added one person, one organisation, please let us know. And anything you want to save on the chat, do it now. And thank you very much, all of you, for giving up your time to share this. I've learned a lot. I've got a lot more to learn. I realise that now. I'll work on that soon. Right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks very much, Leslie. Pete.
Thanks, Pete.
Thank you, Leslie. Brilliant.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you.
We'll leave it on just in case anybody still wants to chat or add anything to the thing, but please leave if you want to. Yeah. Thanks, Pete.
Yeah, I'll leave it running. Okay.
Yeah, thanks for that.
I'm going to have another cup of coffee.
If anyone wants to talk, we'll leave it running for a bit, as I said.
Yeah.
Well, I would just add that Lockleys Love Solar is treading water at the moment, but we did write up our learning in a little report just to share with it. It's not little, it's quite a lot of pages. Because we were funded through Power to Change, we've been able to tread water, and we've been able to survive the sell-off of Bristol Energy. We were going to have a shared solar rooftop farm, and Bristol Energy were going to handle the billing. We had wanted to do an energy local type product where you would sell the electricity generated on one roof to neighbours. Actually, it's cut down to, we would just sell the electricity generated on that roof to the people inside the house and get an export tariff on the electricity that isn't used by the householder. But that's dropped out at the moment because of Bristol Energy being sold off. And we're kind of waiting for Octopus Energy to come up with a model that works for solar on roofs for us. But so we're all plugging away. And I by way of chat, I just wanted to, I'm interested to drop in this idea, and that is that there's a view of technologies and new technologies that people like us at the low end start bringing in new ideas, and they don't make sense at the top end. You know, we want to generate our electricity within a substation area and share it, and it doesn't make sense to big electricity users at all. But eventually these technologies do take over. And the best example I can come up with in technology is that some years ago, Apple gave up on their chip maker, Intel, for the small chips that they put in phones, and used a British design from Acorn Computers, if anybody remembers Acorn. And they started building on the ARM chip, which was Acorn's RISC machine. And now Apple have just started in their new MacBook Airs, they're putting a chip in that is as powerful as Intel's most powerful chip, and then a little bit more. But Intel's most powerful chip requires 125 watts to run, right? It's got to be plugged into the mains. Apple's chip runs on 5 watts. So it's a complete shift, and it can go in pretty much anything. It's called the M1 chip. And my feeling is that And Apple knew they wanted to do that right from the start. And it's taken all the time to build up the resources to do this. And I think that over the next 10 years, we will get there with community energy. We will get to the point where we can own the rooftop resource. And this is the point in Bristol. The One City Climate Strategy in Bristol is calling for solar on 96,000 roofs. It wants 500 megawatts of solar, and they're saying it's going to cost £600 million. And the one thing that we have done with Lockleys Love Solar is look at purchasing the solar wholesale and setting up to install it ourselves. And at today's prices, instead of £600 million for 500 megawatts, we could install it for £300 million. So, and why would you pay more? The answer is the council would go through a procurement process. It would go to people who are wanting to make a really big margin and all the rest of it. And it would end up being installed by people from outside Bristol. Whereas if we said, wait, sorry, Caroline, I'm sort of finished there. But just to say what's possible.
I have heard about a scheme. Somebody said it was Totnes. I'm not sure. I'd like to know who it is. Apparently a council did put forward the money for a bulk buy of solar panels, and then they were installed on people's roofs at a much lower cost than they would have been otherwise. Now, does anybody know where that has already happened?
Well, there's one in Frome.
Oh, is it? Frome? Because they're independent council.
Yeah, and they're working actually with a retail energy company. So it's a retail solar installer who are offering people quite a good price for solar on the roof. But you know, we've researched this, and we talked to wholesale installers and wholesalers, and it turns out that the wholesale price, the difference between the wholesale price and the retail prices is quite substantial.
Mm-hmm.
And if we are setting up to put solar on 96,000 roofs, why wouldn't you create a community-owned installer as well, and do the training and create the jobs and all of that? And so while Lockleys Love Solar has been absolutely nothing in the last year, until it's got ready and not put a solar on a single roof, where we've had the freedom with the funding that we've had from Power to Change to just start exploring these options. And you know, so I hope we'll come back at some point and say it's starting to come together, or somebody else will figure it out.
So to find out about this, would I get in touch with Frome Council, or is there another organisation that partnered up with them?
Freco, the Frome Renewable Energy Company.
Thanks.
I'm part of Freco.
There you go.
So it was working with IDEA, IDDEA, and all that happened really was that Freco worked with IDEA to find enthusiastic householders, and we ended up putting I can't remember how many households, but many households who had this sort of bulk purchase, so they were able to get the solar panels put on a bit cheaper.
Yeah,
I don't think it's anything near the discount that David's just been talking about, but it did galvanise a sort of a set of people who otherwise wouldn't have been galvanised.
I think they did 70 roofs, so it's quite a lot.
We're all very frustrated by the proposed housing schemes that are coming up. In Salisbury, we're going to have quite a lot of houses built locally because we've been allocated an enormous proportion of the government housing here, and the councillors, I think, are very frustrated by the fact that they won't be able to make the houses as high in their kind of zero carbon credentials. It'll just be bog standard housing, basically. So if we can offer house owners, once they've bought these houses or whatever, something in the way of a cheaper option with solar panels and things, they may well be more inclined to do it, which would be great. and the council might well support it.
Yeah, and another side benefit, IDEA offered Frico a small sort of kickback fee for introducing and and creating this. So Frico and in fact Avalon Community Energies, which done a similar thing, they've both generated a small amount of income for the community benefit company.
Also, Caroline, there's an example in Swanage in Dorset where I can probably send you a link, but they did a tender to get companies to quote for bulk purchase of solar PV. And it's just been approved, I think, by the town council, but it's mainly promoting it, and it's at a relatively small scale. Again, anybody who wants to buy their solar PV, might be 10% cheaper. But interesting, David, going back to your point about, if I understood it correctly, about community energy groups being a bit more active in actual purchasing and installation. The next Wessex Community Energy Network meeting, which maybe be February, March, I think we've got Martin Heath from Basingstoke Energy Services Corp wants to give a talk, and they've been much more proactive as actually consultants and installers. So they've gone through the whole round of PV on, particularly on commercial roofs, from the organisation. So maybe Martin Heath can explain that opportunity.
That sounds really interesting. We did find a contract installer who would, and basically, just to spill the beans, we can buy 5 kilowatts of solar for 2,000 quid from a wholesaler, when we were being offered £4,000 to install 4 kilowatts. And we found a contract installer who, if you don't need full scaffolding, would install a 4 kilowatt system for 1,000 quid. So it's 3,000 quid for 5 kilowatts. And we're not set up to do this yet, but when the sunshine comes back and we've all got our Oxford COVID jab or whatever, and then maybe all this opens up. So I put a link in the chat to the Lockleys Love Solar's learning report. And I would also recommend, just for pure inspiration, there is a wonderful group called Rethink X. It's just Rethink with an X at the back of it. And they are looking at the exponential growth of technologies. And they have a number of reports. They think that 5 technologies are developing exponentially and will change the world for us.